It is so great to see everyone on. We are really excited about today's topic. My name is Gabby Powers. I'm a product marketing manager at NetSertive, and today's topic is how to lower your franchise's local cost per lead in 2026. Probably the most hot button topic any franchise marketer will talk about and has talked about over the last 2 decades, 3 decades. I'm going to let Jason on my team introduce himself, and then we'll get going.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Jason Lynch, head of marketing here at NetSertive. I'm so happy to be in this webinar with you all. Thanks for taking your time today. I'm excited because this is super practical. Even though your cost per lead it's the most in your face metric, you could argue it's not the most important because you have to look at it in context, right? But it's something that people ask about all the time and they worry about it. And if it's going up, that feels bad, even if it means that you're making more money on the end, right? So it's just an interesting in your face metric that I think does absolutely play a big part in how you are managing your franchise network or your location's growth. So I think it's a great topic to get into. We have some tools for you and just really practical strategies to go through. So let's dig in.
I love it. Jason and I are both very passionate about this topic, so we're excited to present on it. Very quickly, a little bit about NetSertive before we dive in. NetSertive is a digital marketing partner really built for franchise and multi-location brands. So we help national brands with that local presence really win by combining data, automation, and that hands-on expertise of our customer experience team. Our platform is called the Multi-Location Experience Platform, and it really connects corporate marketing strategies and insight with local execution to make sure that we can drive stronger ROI for every individual unit in your network. So we've spent over $2 billion in media through our platform and also have an award-winning brand and customer experience team that I love bragging on that really helps to guide our customers through all the intricacies of digital marketing. So if you have questions about NetSertive, feel free to ping me or Jason after this, but we're going to go ahead and roll in to our topic on cost per lead. So Jason, if you want to.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we're starting baseline today. I know we're close to the holidays. I think it's a Thursday. Cost per lead, what is it? What are we doing? So cost per lead or CPL, marketing campaign spend, and the number of new leads that you get in from that campaign. So yes, we're starting baseline, but we want to make sure we have that baseline to understand that this metric is directly driven from your campaign performance. So let's say that you spent $1,000 on a marketing campaign and you got 20 leads from that campaign. Your cost per lead would be $50. So cost per lead is a very in your face, easy metric. And a lot of times franchise owners and franchise marketers will really hold on to this metric. It is not the only metric to look at when you're talking about campaign efficiencies, but it is one that you can very easily pinpoint and pull a couple of levers to be able to move you from maybe an unoptimized cost per lead to one that is much more efficient for your brand. And every industry has its own metrics for cost per lead and what is considered a good or a bad one. So we won't talk about, industry specifics today, but all of the practices that we're going to talk about today are things that any industry leader could implement for their franchise multi-location brand to really implement moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. It definitely varies so much by industry and then also by market, right? And location, even within a market, because some markets have dozens of competitors. Some they're the first entrant of a new concept that's super hot and trending, right? And it's just, I think that's what people who are at the network level, that's sort of the fun part about marketing. And the challenge is how do you figure out what's happening at the local level? And then from a franchisee perspective, it's really what is going on in my business and that lens that they have around understanding, okay, this is where I want to grow. This is how I want to grow, and watching those leads come in and really, I think, taking ownership and responsibility at the local level for that spend and the return there.
100%. So the goal here is really when we talk about cost per lead, the great thing and also sometimes a frustrating thing, there are only so many levers you can pull when you're looking to make an impact on your cost per lead. So the three pillars that we're going to really focus on today, the first one is going to be tactical. The second one, like more of the experience of your consumer. And then the third one would be operational. So talking through tactical, what does the ad campaign actually look like? What is your targeting? How you're utilizing, first party data and the keywords that you're utilizing in more of your search campaigns to really ensure that you're reaching the right audience and driving the right intent with your ads. The second part of that is going to be the experiential. So your landing page and your user experience. Once a user actually clicks or engages with one of your ads, what are they seeing on their side? And what's making them either want to give you their information or maybe not give you the information? And then after all of that, something that I think a lot of us forget about is the operations side. So the sales, the data loops that your business is structured around that takes that lead and makes it actually someone who's a prospective customer of your business. So our conversation today, I think, is really labeled around these three levers or three pillars that we want to focus on and really dive into. Each one of these can help your cost per lead. And a lot of things that you can do in each one of these categories is a quick fix or a quick shift in how you view the category as it looks in your campaign metrics.
Yeah, that's great. Um, Diving in here with digital strategy, it really does come back to the fundamentals. And maybe if you're on this call and you're a franchisee, or you are a franchise marketer, right? We have people from all different roles that had signed up for this because I think this touches all kinds of, every role in a franchise growth organization. And so, you might not be in the weeds looking at a lot of these things, right? In fact, you're probably not. You have a vendor expert that you trust, a partner that is oftentimes behind the scenes. But I think it's important to revisit some of the fundamentals so that you can think, how does this apply to me? Because I guarantee that if you look behind the curtain and you have fresh eyes on any campaign, right, there's something that could be improved, or there's something that, there was an assumption made somewhere along the way, and now it's always been done like that, and you didn't realize it. And like, that's the kind of thing that we see all the time as we're digging in and helping, franchise networks look at their marketing optimization. So if you just look at the fundamentals of like what determines cost per lead, right? So it's the keyword traffic opportunity, and that, like, the example of a hot trending concept, right? Like something that's really cool. Maybe there's not a lot of them yet. So maybe people have not started looking for that business yet. Or maybe you see that keyword has, wow, this has grown 800%, right, in the last 3 months. Like, this category keyword's really trending. The budget and bidding strategy. So if you think of, let's say you have 1,000 searches for a keyword total, how much of that can you win, right? You say, great, I'll take all 1,000 clicks. Right? Not worse. So you have to say, okay, what's the budget? How are we going to bid and provide a valuable end-to-end experience so that you are able to win as much of that traffic as efficiently as possible? So you're looking at how you're training the algorithm in Google, which is a very real thing. So if someone says that to you, they're not lying, right? It's like a very made up thing to say. But you really do have to feed the algorithm. If it's Google, if it's, any ad network now, the way that they're built is you're training it on conversions and, showing their AI behind the scenes. This is what good looks like. This is what's converting. And so you have to look at that strategy of how much are we willing to bid based on how much we could potentially, how much opportunity there is and how much, well, we're going to convert. And then really alignment across targeting, intent, ad message, landing page. That is, just key, right? Quality score is the metric people have talked about for years there, where you're matching who you're going after and showing ads that match what they're looking for and what you want them to do. Because it's easy to go after, traffic. Like in this example here of best garage floor coating company near me, that's someone clearly that is been probably doing some research and they are ready to get quotes and buy, right? And start entering that lower funnel stage versus if someone just searched epoxy, right? Or like epoxy coating, that does not indicate the same level of intent.
100%.
So you're going to be wasting a ton of money if you just buy epoxy searches and you say, well, there's like thousands of searches for epoxy coating. Say, well, that has millions of uses in different industries. So it's like you have to be specific. Again, I know we're hitting on the fundamentals here, but I actually believe that this is where you have to focus to lower your cost per lead. Creative quality and relevance. So are you engaging, providing that creative that activates your brand, that makes people want to click and engage and trust you? How's the conversion rate performance, right? If your page loads terribly on mobile, Google, Bing will penalize you for that. Are there enough trust signals? Does it feel localized enough, right? When you're doing all of these things well and at scale, then you start to see efficiencies and you're able to see clearly what's working and then start to double down on that. And this is where I was talking about, you can only bid so much. I mean, we've had people who they want to spend $200 a month on paid, or they say, we basically have an unlimited budget on, for all intents and purposes, but there's not enough, opportunity to pour into a single channel and a single campaign, right? Because if in Raleigh, North Carolina, as an example of epoxy garage floor, there's only 210 searches for that, right? At a $5 top of page bid, then there's only so much that you can do to bid on that. So when you're looking in these digital strategy plans, I really believe in getting in the weeds as a leader, right? If you are a franchise marketer or you are a franchisee, until you've really gone through the process of getting in the weeds and then coming out of the weeds and trusting that you understand what's going on and your partner and your team, everyone's on the same page, right? I think it's important to do that due diligence and to understand because we just see people wasting money all the time because there are assumptions made and not understanding, right? So we want to give you some of these questions to ask of your campaigns. And so looking at, how could we understand what's the opportunity? And we have this calculator here. I'm going to switch over to, so we have this cost per lead and ROI calculator, and there are 3 sections of it where you're looking at your campaign spend and then how those leads convert, and then your business and operations metrics and how efficient you are in converting that. So we'll just focus on the top one initially, where we're going to say, okay, so if we have a max advertising budget, let's just say of, $2,000 a month or $1,000 a month. And the average cost per click is $1. The lead conversion rate is 20%. That would be extremely high for most campaigns. Let's say it's 5%. Then you've got, just like we had that slide earlier, there's, 1,000, because it's a dollar a click, you got 1,000 website sessions, 50 conversions at a $20 cost per lead, right? So this is where you start to figure out, okay, so if we had a $5 cost per click, right? Like that garage coding example, and we had a 2% conversion, then that's $250 per lead, right? Which we'll talk later on about profitability metrics. And that's really where you get into clarity around the budget, because $250, like, oh, that makes me jump. The $250. Well, if your average ticket is, $4,000, or your average lifetime value of someone is $10,000, right, then you have to look further down the funnel to understand what a good CPL actually is. So it's really about matching, because it gets better to pay a slightly higher CPL for high intent keywords than it is to pay, feel good about a lower CPL for junk keywords that don't actually convert. So this is a lot of the fun things. And then as you're thinking about this, it's also important to think about targeting the right audience, right? Which we talked a bit about. And there are a lot of ways of thinking about this. And I'm just kind of planting the seed. If you think about how this applies to your business, sometimes Google or Bing they have audiences already, people that they have identified as being in market for something, right? Like auto shoppers is the easiest thing, or different professionals or parents, or you have these different audiences where they're saying, okay, they're going to be in market for certain things. They're in market for business software. So you have these different audiences that you're building. So also another benefit and part of the compound interest of paid is that you have audience building, right? So you're not only getting the immediate lead, but you could be creating a retargeting audience, right? And then that's where you're going to get the lowest cost per lead actually is on retargeting. So someone had clicked on a lead or clicked on a link or visited your website. There's all kinds of different retargeting that happens. And that's where you're really able to nurture someone, especially if you have a long sales cycle and they're really getting in there and doing a lot of research and comparing solutions before they start reaching out to people. So you're able to nurture those in-market audiences. So this just high-level takeaway is, am I able to use custom audiences? Like, can I target someone on YouTube that has searched for epoxy garage coating or something, right? Like you have these different ways of thinking about building audiences and targeting audiences. And then are you able to find these predetermined audiences based on your industry, who's in market, how can I retarget people? And that really is where you start seeing the compounding interest over time of a campaign. That's why you need to have a campaign in market for a few months before you're really able to know what's working at all. And then you're just starting to really understand what's happening at that point, right? Because there's definitely this kind of vesting period where the algorithm's getting trained and you're finding people to retarget and it's all kind of the flywheel starting to spin. And this is a case study where we had a network that we were working with a lot of locations. And, in this case, we're going beyond search to optimize the cost per lead, right? So we started with a franchise group. We're running primarily search campaigns. And then we noticed that the display campaigns were outperforming search in a few accounts. And then, the display cost per lead was a lot lower across the board. And we shifted budget from search to display in these accounts just to really, and this happened to be a high ticket purchase and there was a long nurture cycle. So being able to find in market people for this remodeling service and get them in the funnel and to, be retargeted. And it ultimately ends up with a lower cost per lead across the board. And that is an insight from comparing a lot of different channels, a lot of different campaigns, and a lot of the locations, right? So that we can see what is actually going to drive down the cost per lead. So it's that there's a lot of things you got to kind of hold in your short-term memory when you're thinking about these things, and understand how they all connect. So that's like the thing that keeps, marketers wake up in the middle of the night thinking about this kind of stuff for their clients. For better or worse. And it's like, I know what we could do. Let's switch to this.
I love it. And 1,000%. I think it's so important, Jason, on this, especially. I think this is the first of a couple times we're going to talk about the importance of testing and the importance of making adjustments, not a set it and forget it campaign strategy. So for any franchise marketer or franchisee on this call today, who we are like 5 slides in to like a 20 slide deck, this is already overwhelming. It can be overwhelming because there's so many levers you can pull when you're talking about how to create a campaign. The important thing here is not doing everything, but doing the thing that's going to make the biggest difference and really determining, okay, I have to let this actually set and change this campaign metric and then actually let the algorithm do its job. So a lot of times we want to make so many changes because we see all these great ideas. I think this is a great example of we gathered that data initially to be able to make an educated decision and then saw a cost per lead benefit because of that. So I think that testing period is so important to give yourself enough time, but then also fail fast and make decisions that get your cost per lead in a better place once you have the data to actually work with.
That's awesome. All right. So the prospect experience, it's really what is that landing page? What does it look like when they come to your site?
100%. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about optimizing for cost per lead, some marketers can get in their head of, okay, optimizing the campaign, making the campaign better. I would really argue that a lot of times the campaigns and the algorithms there, they're changing so much that you just stay up to date with that so easily. But one of the best ways to ensure your digital presence and campaign performance is always strong is really following this hierarchy of needs. So at NetSertive, we speak a lot about the digital marketing hierarchy of needs and each one of these layers and how they all work together to ensure you have a very strong and performance-based presence online and with your digital paid campaigns. I'm not going to go over every layer of this today, but really wanted to hone in on that bottom layer of your web content and your localized location pages that are going to be capturing this actual lead information. So a lot of times if an individual will click over to our website, we want to ensure that the experience from that page to the ad that they saw is as seamless as possible. And so that's where ensuring that your web content is as fully optimized as possible, it'll really help every other layer of your digital marketing to ensure that you have that one owned channel as optimized and performance ready as possible. And so looking at, building a location page for an individual business, this next slide is going to have a couple of call outs that really speak to some of the best pieces that you can look at while you're trying to optimize a location page for conversion. The first thing I'll mention is that automatic geolocation. So for multi-location and franchise-based businesses, you want to ensure that if someone clicks on a localized ad for a business, they are getting as far down in the funnel as possible to be able to submit their information or call your business to become a lead. So that means that they're not appearing on the homepage of your site or on a business page, but instead they're looking at a localized page that is already geo-targeted to be the closest and most relevant business to them. You also want to ensure that when you're looking at the promotions in the ads that they're seeing, they should definitely see that promotion on the page they land on. It's a seamless experience, and it also reminds them of what their incentive is for actually engaging with your business in another step. At this point, we've gotten clicks from campaigns. We've not gotten actual lead form submissions or calls. So it's imperative here that we give them exactly and remind them, right? The consumer's brain is always moving around. We remind them all the time of why they are on our page and why it's taking the next step. So that's where that quality content that is always localized comes into play. I have a great stat later on talking about how consumers trust businesses that they perceive as local so much more than those that they just perceive as big national corporations and brands. And so ensuring that the content on this page feels as relevant to that local consumer as possible will really build that trust early on and encourage them to take that next step with the franchise or multi-location business. One thing I'll also call out on this is integrated call tracking. Gone are the days where we can only count lead form submissions as the leads that are coming in for our business. The consumer in most industries now, and I'd say across, especially the United States, they are highly skeptical of digital searches and giving their information, giving their phone number, their email, right? I think we've all had full inboxes on our end of just emails that we've had to unsubscribe from or do whatever because we just filled up and they have no attention to pay to your business anymore. So a lot of times if they're not going to give a form fill, they might call your business to get specific questions answered and then be even more engaged because they're already meeting with someone on your team. So integrated call tracking allows for you to track specific campaign results based on the calls that are coming in so that you don't look at a campaign and say, well, I only got 4 form fills from this, but I got 20 calls from that. How many of those individuals on those calls were they quality conversations and people who were looking to take the next step with your business? So depending on your industry, you may see calls be more or less valuable. We highly recommend having that integrated call tracking feature just to ensure that you're measuring every single piece of data so you can have the data to be able to make educated decisions on your campaign performance. And then very last thing, the one that I think we all are familiar with, you want to have a very concise lead form that gets the most important information out of that consumer so that your business can help them to take the next step. And a key thing that I think some businesses, I'm surprised, still forget is that automatic routing to the CRM. I would say that is the most key piece of a location page lead submission to ensure that you have the speed to lead on the back end to contact that lead and get them engaged in next steps. So whether it's a booking for an appointment or a consultation or an online quote, you want to ensure that as a business, you are getting to them as fast as possible. These consumers who are coming onto your website and submitting leads most likely are looking at your competitors as well as they're Googling and searching for solutions. So the business that gets back to them the fastest and gives them an amazing customer experience in the back end will be the one to win their business. So that automatic routing to the CRM ensures that your local owners or business operators can get back to those leads as soon as possible and ensure that you keep them engaged in their buying process. So these are just a couple of the things that we really look at when we're optimizing local pages on the NetStartup side of things to ensure that our customers have as optimized of a web presence as possible to drive lead growth and a lower cost per lead for all of their campaigns. And then another thing that I think is so important on the ad creation side, but then also looking at meeting our customers where they are, is creative optimization. So using AI, I know we always talk about AI nowadays in marketing webinars, but I think it's the best tool that we have at our disposal right now to mass produce creative content that has local relevance and also allows us to match creative to audience intent, promotions, and seasonality so that you don't have one individual having to create this for a 30, 40, 100, 500 location business. You want to ensure that you are maximizing your ability to test creative and also finding what's speaking to my audience in this season of their lives and where we are, whether it's seasonally in time of year, it's with a certain promotion, or it's a certain audience segment that you're testing for the first time. What type of creative is going to get them to stop in their scroll and actually relevant themselves to your business and give their lead information? So if you are continuously testing, you allow for yourself to determine what content's working, be able to backfill what's not working to test more, and actually spend your budget smarter. So not only are you decreasing your cost per lead with your learnings, but you're also optimizing your overall marketing budget to ensure you can continue to run campaigns effectively. So a new stat that I've seen recently that's super exciting for all of our AI lovers out there is that advertisers using AI creative optimization actually achieve a 19% better cost per acquisition compared to traditional campaigns where they are manually creating their assets, so photos and videos, and optimizing them that way. So 19% better cost per acquisition, that's acquiring a customer, not just acquiring a lead. And so if I can achieve a 19%, heck, if I can achieve like a 5% better cost per acquisition by using technology to take more work off of my plate as a marketer, that is something that I definitely want to put my entire being behind moving into the new year when I'm looking to optimize campaigns.
That's a crazy stat. I mean, I think it also speaks to this just next punch list of things to test, because I would wager that if someone is using AI, right, and there's a network that has scaled AI creative, it probably also means that they're pretty mature in a lot of things around their campaigns, right? So they're probably testing and learning, not just with AI, but with, like all these other things that you can be aware of, right?
Yeah.
So it just a punch list of ideas of things you can look at. So can you test audience targeting, seasonality? That's a huge one for a lot of our networks. What's the best play for seasonality? Where do you invest in the year in order to deliver on your season? Bid strategies, conversion type and source to revenue, the self-report attribution. That's a great one. And you could even just run an experiment where you ask each network to say, hey, on the next 25 touches with customer, can you say, by the way, how did you hear about us for the first time? Do you remember? and then have them just add that to an Excel sheet or send or fill out a Google survey form, right? On uh, your intranet or your however it is, right? Have them text a number, make it super easy to get the data back from the locations. And you could just have that as a snapshot of like, well, we, across all of our locations now, we have 500 responses from customers about how they heard from us, heard about us rather. So again, I'm not saying that's like scientifically precise as much as it is another data point and part of the attribution picture. Website headlines, that's an easy one. You can split test that with a lot of different tools, even just with the UTM parameters there. You can change the headline as people hit your page from different there's a lot of different tools that you can use to do that. So they can actually see something that's more relevant to the ad that they clicked on. Offers is huge. Content localization, and they Gabby really hit on that. And it's true. The more localized it is, the better the performance. So there's a huge, huge lift on localization. So the more trust, the more authentic looking pictures, like that's really just what drives engagement. And then a location finder and review responses. Again, it goes back to the fundamentals. I mean, I was on a franchise uh, site yesterday, actually looking for a location, and I had to scroll down to North Carolina. I had to scroll for 30 seconds. It felt like trying to find on my phone. And I was just thinking, this would be much better if it were a map-based location finder that knew where I was and just immediately showed me the location. So they're losing people by asking them to scroll for 30 seconds.
Yep.
It's like, would you ask someone to walk up and down in front of your store for 30 seconds before coming in? Right.
Be fun.
Maybe if you're a fitness
There you
concept,
go.
it's a warm-up. Right. And then again, review responses, that's these basic trust builders. So looking at the cost per lead sheet again here very briefly, if you're tracking through your campaign budget, it's really you can see the percentage of leads that are qualified, the percent that engage. So how many of these are actual real responses? How many look like they're your target market? So if you said, you're pretty tuned in, 90% are qualified, and then how many leads are you hearing back from? If that's a 70% number of leads that buy, right? So this is where you start getting into, okay, is one sale a month enough? Do I have enough profitability to pay for this campaign program, right? And in this case, it's not. So we have to adjust these levers up here. So that's where we start getting into operations and efficiency. So just looking at the high and low performers, for example, across locations, I think this is a view that we really like. And this like plot analysis where you're really like, we'll plot the return on ad spend across locations and network. So we can see that each one of these little dots is an actual franchise. And we want to see where is everything trending. And I think this is where we discover a lot of interesting market dynamics and also operational issues, because we've seen things like, wow, look at this outlier. What's going on in this location? And then you realize, oh, well, they've been sending all their, phone leads to an voicemail box that no one's checking, or we got a new phone line and forgot to set up the voicemail box, or there's these things like this that you start, like, it's all on the table for how interesting things get at the location level. I know there's one story where someone we talked to, and it sort of was, they were printing out all of the leads, and then they would give them to someone, and then that person would call all the leads for the week on Friday. It's like, that's not speed.
There's got to be a better way to do this.
Yes, there's got to be a better way to do it. So operationally, this is really where you get the profitability, is how can you deliver profitably at the local level for the lead cost that you have. And a big part of that is the not letting up on the grassroots and the awareness around the location.
100%. This is the stat I was mentioning earlier. 76% of consumers say they trust businesses that they perceive as local, even if they're not. So when you're thinking of national franchises with 1,000 locations, you may not always perceive them as local. But if that local business owner is involved in their community and makes themselves known, they're the mayor of their market, right? That's the phrasing we utilize. Consumers are going to be more likely to want to patron that business because they feel a local connection to the business. And so I think something that we would be remiss to mention, even as a digital marketing partner, is that you cannot let up on local. We have seen trends time and time again with our customers, that show that high performing locations that have very competitive cost per leads for their industry also are the ones who are out there doing grassroots marketing, doing local marketing. And funny enough, the ones that potentially are in more competitive markets or have more fluctuations in cost per lead, when you really dig into some of the business structures behind what they're doing for local marketing, it tends to be lighter than the ones who are outperforming on the cost per lead side. So even with the advances in AI and automation and digital marketing, one thing has not changed, and that's people trust brands that feel local. And that trust will directly influence your cost per lead and your lead quality as well. So I think it's really important to look at ideas, especially around this time of year with November, December. This is typically a more competitive time for a lot of industries for digital marketing because of the way that Black Friday, we call it Black November almost now, where the sales and promotions are starting weeks and weeks earlier. And national advertisers with huge budgets are coming into local markets to advertise. And cost per lead can tend to fluctuate a lot more for local businesses. And so when franchisees or location owners ask, what can I do to help get my cost per lead down to where it needs to be? Focus on grassroots marketing, focus on partnering locally, having a preferred partner kit that you can deliver to gyms, schools, small businesses, whatever it may be that is your target market or niche in your community. How can you create a kit that you can replicate time and time again to be able to deliver to them, to partner with them locally? I also think activating purpose in your partnerships is really huge, especially during this time. Giving back during the holidays is always something that's very important to local business owners. And so cause-based campaigns or even local love campaigns, we're going into Small Business Saturday later this month, ways that you can showcase that even your franchise or multi-location business is locally owned and operated. All of that really builds trust to allow you to grow your marketing impact in your community, which will directly impact your cost per lead in digital campaigns because those individuals are already knowing, liking, and trusting your business.
Yeah, it's so good. We have a local market that we love called Trader Joe's. It's a locally owned, we own market. Very charming. The people there are so nice. We just feel good about giving them our business.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, but like Trader Joe's is a good example of that, where you got to do
Sure.
things to make people feel local. It feels neighborhood because I think they actually achieve it, right? Where they make the store layout kind of, where you bump into new products and they have the people that work there chat you up, and it's like a local feel. So I think there's a level of that where you can put that strategy in and achieve the authentic outcome, at the end result, even if it is from something that's a corporate strategy. So if we look at some of these operational items to audit, it's really understanding your goals and performance metrics and how those might be showing up in your, in your operational issues that you can fix to improve your CPL and campaign profitability.
100%. I think the first one that you want to look at as kind of a cornerstone to everything is for most franchise and multi-location brands, they're partnering with a vendor or someone to run their campaigns, or they're doing it in-house. So the first thing you want to ensure is that your vendor knows what KPIs matter most to your franchise. And I'd also caveat this and say, do your franchise or location owners agree that those KPIs are the most important ones, right? So does your vendor understand what is going to move the needle, what matters to you as a franchise marketer or a franchise owner? And then are your conversions optimized to ensure that they're meeting those KPIs? So that goes for budget strategy, creative metrics, all of that. So a red flag here, we'd say, is if your conversions are not optimized by your franchise goals and your location goals, that's something to definitely want to reassess as you're going into 2026. I'd argue you should do it like later today after this call. Make sure that your KPIs are being addressed specifically. But there are so many ways to format campaigns that can impact cost per lead. Ultimately, though, you want to make sure that the business KPIs you have at the end of the day are being reflected in your campaign proposals on the front end.
It's good. I think along the same lines of how is your current partner evaluating budget efficiency and how can you tell? So it's really just misalignment between budget and performance. And so you can look at return on ad spend across channels and see, all right, how are we evaluating the distribution of the budget? How do we determine what goes into uh, Google versus Microsoft versus Meta, right? And I think that's where maybe you get there's like you could mistakenly spend all of your budget on a premium keyword in Google when you could actually take a lower competition keyword on both Google and Microsoft and spend the same budget but get more leads,
1000%.
right? So campaign optimization strategies is another one.
Oof, this one it hits close to home on for me. How often are your campaigns being optimized and is often enough? A big red flag when we're looking at vendors or partnerships who are creating campaigns for multi-location brands. If they have a set it and forget it approach, I know we mentioned earlier algorithms need time to learn. That's 1000% true. And also, you have to learn alongside those algorithms and ensure that you're checking in on campaigns and optimizing to ensure that your performance isn't lagging for months, 2 months, 3 months, because you're trying to let things learn. So ensuring that optimizing is not always making changes, but it is allowing yourself to test new creatives, test new items to ensure that your campaigns are performing stronger and stronger. If it's a set it and forget it approach, you basically are putting money into a trash can and just kind of letting it sit there for a second. So this is something that I'm very, very passionate about. The visual on the left here, I think, is super cool. It shows the thousands of things that our platform is doing for one of our 200 location brands. So for those 200 location brands, having 285 localized campaigns, 5,400 ad unit extensions, just under 1,500 active ad units. And then this is the one that I love, 3,517 monthly campaign changes for that network. So really showing that between our technology on our end on NetSertive side, but then also our customer experience team going in there and making constant adjustments to really allow for their campaigns to be optimized fully at the end of the day. So just because you're in a learning phase does not mean you can't optimize. It just means that you have to optimize in smarter ways to ensure that you're allowing the platform to do its thing as well.
Yeah, and a big one there is like adding negative keywords, for example. So
As
getting
important.
false clicks. Like we love the Barbie Jeep example, right? The Jeep dealership does not need traffic for Barbie Jeeps unless they're selling Barbie Jeeps, so they're not. So just adding negative keywords is all of that like campaign tuning that you can do actively, even while you're letting some of the key things like bidding strategy, vest and build up. So another thing, just along those same lines, is just best practices around smart bidding, right? So if you have those unchanged bidding strategies after launch, that's a red flag. So if someone, like I was talking about, letting you know, you kind of got to go through training the algorithms to say, okay, we have enough conversions here that we're deeming quality conversions, right? So at the beginning of a campaign, there's a new account. Maybe you set the bidding strategy to maximize clicks, right? And then you're going through to conversions, and then you're maximizing the return on a target ad spend, right? So you can go through all of these things where then you start to trust the platform more and more in the sense of like knowing that you've fed the platforms good data over time, and now you can be able to use that AI because it has good data, basically. Mm. So I know we're close to time here, so I'll just say I know the one question we get a lot. If you have Q&A, you should be able to enter it in the chat. If not, we'll give you our info, and you can definitely message us. But one question we get a lot is where do you start? This is overwhelming. So I think a good place to start is to look at, well, what is the best thing that you believe is happening right now? What's performing the best, and how can you improve on that campaign? Right? Start there. Can you get more efficiency out of it? And then also, what's your biggest line item? So, how is that big line item performing? And just kind of start with those two things. Is the biggest line item also the biggest or the best performing thing? Can you maybe make it the biggest line item, right? If you think it's performing well. So I think after looking at, I wanted to drop this URL into the chat, and we'll see if this chat works. It might not be working right now. Let me see if I can do that successfully. To everyone, here is the ROI calculator, just so you have that. It's also on our website. If you go to netserve.com and go to resources, so definitely check that out, and you can see, again, if I have $2,000 to spend, and I could get $5, if I can get a 5% conversion rate, and we've got this lead qualification, and the average revenue per customer is $500, still not good. So what if the average lifetime value is $3,000? Right now we've got a 300% return. So that's where I think you can have fun with those operational items of how can we make it more profitable to deliver the service, and then how can I extend the lifetime value, and then you start getting more and more of that cost per lead feeding into return on ad spend and feeding into your ROI. So thanks everyone for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining. And that link is active on our website as well.